Top 10 Marvel Comics of the year 1960. These are the most valuable as ranked by the Overstreet Price Guide prices. And these are also the most highly collected and influential books of the year. Let's dive in. Number 10 most valuable book of the year is Tales to Astonish, number 9. It also ranks as the 122nd most valuable Marvel comic of the 1960s, features a Jack Kirby cover art. And we've got Steve Ditko, Doug Wildey, Don Heck interior art on this issue. This book is quite scarce on the CGC census, only 67 copies ever graded, with 5 super high grade copies, 9.0 or higher. Heritage Auctions has sold 22 copies in the last 2 decades. Bold cover. Using the Overstreet annual price guides, we can see the growth year by year in all grades. And we can see basically in the last 14 years, the book has doubled in lowest grades, and it has tripled in high grades for raw copies. On the census, we have a 9.4 and 2 9.2s as the highest grades in existence so far. In number 9 place of the year, we have Tales of Suspense, number 9. This features a prototype issue of Iron Man, and this is 3 years before Iron Man would debut as the famous superhero. This is the first of 4 different Iron Man prototype comics written by Stan Lee. And this features Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko art, ranks 121st of the decade. On the census, a lot more copies graded in this book, 124 with 8 high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 41 of these, featuring the monster Diablo. In the Overstreet Price Guide, again, over this time period, you can see the book has not quite doubled in lower grades, and the book has gone up about 2.5 times in high grades raw. There is amazingly a 9.6 existing of this book and 3 9.2s. Very nice high grade copies. Number 8 of the year is Tales to Astonish, number 8. This features a Jack Kirby mummy cover, interior art by Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Paul Reinman, and Don Heck. 120th most valuable of the decade. 78 copies graded by CGC, 2 high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 23 of this 10-cent comic. And again, in the Overstreet Price Guide, year by year, we can see the book has roughly doubled in lower grades, and again, tripled in high grades raw. The highest graded copies are 9.0. There are 2 of them. Number 7 of the year is Tales of Suspense, number 10. This also features Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby art, 111th book of the decade. 67 copies sold at CGC, 5 high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 22. And here we have Cyclops. Again, Overstreet Price Guide, doubled in low grades, tripled in, double in low grades, tripled in high grades. There is a 9.6 of this book existing and 2 9.2s. The number 6 book is Tales of Suspense, number 8. This is another Jack Kirby cover art of the giant monstro, a giant, that's a good cover. We've got interior art from Jack Kirby, Bill Everett, and Steve Ditko. 110th most valuable of the decade. 75 copies graded by CGC, only 2 high-grade copies. 25 copies sold at Heritage Auctions. And again, doubled in low grades and tripled in high grades. The highest grades there are 2 9.0s. Next on our list, Tales to Astonish, number 7, is in 5th place of the year. This is a prototype issue of the Toadman, and this is the only prototype issue they would have. We have a Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko cover and art here. 109th of the decade, 5 of the year. 64 copies graded by CGC, only 6 high grade. Heritage has only sold 10 copies of this. Again, in the Overstreet Price Guide, nice, slow, steady growth year by year. The book has now almost doubled in lower grades in this time frame and tripled in this time frame. And on the census, 9.4 and 9.2 are the highest grades of this book. Number 4 of the year, Tales of Suspense, number 4. This is a prototype issue featuring Aunt May, relative of Peter Parker. And we also have a prototype of the Lava Man in this issue. We have Jack Kirby cover art, also Steve Ditko interior, 106th of the decade, 70 copies graded by CGC, 5 high-grade copies, Heritage has sold 24. Overstreet price guide almost doubled in lowest grades. And again, it has tripled in high grades raw in this time frame. There's a 9.2 and 4 9.0s of this book. Number 3 of the year, we finally get a different title. Journey into Mystery, number 62. This is a prototype issue of the Hulk, and it is the first of 3 Hulk-related prototype issues, predating Incredible Hulk number 1 by 2 years. And this book also features the first appearance of Zemnu, who is referred to as the Hulk. And here you even see it on the cover. It's number 92 most valuable book of the decade for Marvel, number 3 of the year on the census, getting a little busier for this one. 124 copies graded, only 4 high grade copies. Heritage has sold 23. In the Overstreet price guide, more demand for this book. This book has almost tripled in low grades, and it has a little more than tripled in high grades. On the census, there's a 9.4 and 2 9.2s. Number 2 of the year. Here's a surprise one for you. Rawhide Kid, number 17. The title was relaunched with the old numbering, but this is technically a number 1 issue, and it features Jack Kirby cover art. Also, Dick Ayers contributed to this issue. After a 3-year break, Rawhide Kid is back, making this one of the most important relaunches from Marvel in 1960. Making this a very valuable book now, ranking 35th of the entire decade, 74 copies graded by CGC. Look at the jump that this book has had in the last decade. There used to be only 4 copies on the census. There are now 2 high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 14. Cream white background cover makes this a tough one to find in high grade. And on the census, look at how prices have gone crazy. This book was a fairly affordable book a decade ago, and then it made some giant leaps. And now it's quite expensive, even in lower grades. Slow but steady movement every year. But in the last decade, you can see it has jumped 8 times its value in low grades and has gone almost up 10 times in high grade raw. There is a 9.4 and a 9.2 of this Western book. And this actually is, off the top of my head, I think this is the most valuable Marvel Western comic of the 1960s. And the number 1 comic for Marvel Comics from the year 1960, this one way ahead of all the others, Tales to Astonish 13, the first appearance of Groot. Why is this book now so valuable? Because Groot would join the Guardians of the Galaxy team and become very popular in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie series, propelling the value of this book. It is the number 1 comic of the year, ranks 21st of the entire decade. Print run estimated at 163,000 copies. Look at the census, 429 copies graded, because a lot more people hunting this out. Dealers know this book is valuable, high demand. There are only 2 high-grade copies, so really driving up the prices on the high-grade copies. Heritage has now sold 44 copies in the last 2 decades. And using the Overstreet price guide, you can see the book was very cheap up until 2014, when the news of the movie hit, and then all the speculators jumped on it, and the book jumped 10 times in value in a single year. It's still moving steady because this book is quite rare and definitely high demand. And if you consider that this book came out a year before Fantastic Four number 1, making this the oldest Silver Age superhero Marvel comic now that he's part of the Marvel Universe continuity. It's now a $700 book in lowest grade, still making high jumps year by year. And high grade, it's a $13,000 book. And again, if you consider in the last decade, this book has had a monstrous 25 times jump in low grade and a 20-time jump in high grade. On the census, there's a 9.4 and a 9.2 of this book. Now, let's compare these 10 books on the CGC census, see which books are the ones everyone wants, which ones are high on the census, which ones are the rare ones. Tales to Astonish 13 by far is way in the lead with 429 copies, followed by Journey into Mystery 62 and Tales of Suspense number 9. On the low end of the spectrum, it's actually Tales to Astonish 7 that has only 64 copies graded. None of these books have a 9.8, but Tales of Suspense 10 does have a 9.6. So there's a few copies grading in all of these books above a 9.0, but generally all very rare copies. Go on eBay to see if you can find any of these, see what these books are currently selling for, and check out gpanalysis.com to look up past sales of graded copies of all of these books to see where the market is going. We do this series every week. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this channel.